Welcome to Rise Untold, where the stories behind the spotlight come alive. Before he wore the green tracksuit, before the world chanted for 56, before Squid Game shattered Netflix records and broke into every living room on the planet, Lee Jung-jae was invisible. A name no one knew outside of South Korea. A face haunted by failure, by loss, by the weight of survival. Today, we see a global superstar. Back then, he was just a boy selling ice cream on the streets of Seoul because his family was drowning in debt. Lee wasn't born into fame, he was born into struggle. His father ran a failing business. His mother worked non-stop just to keep food on the table. And Lee? He hustled, scraped, and survived. School wasn't a dream. It was a burden. He didn't even plan to act. He wanted to become an interior designer. But fate doesn't follow plans. It breaks them. One day, while working part-time at a cafe, a modeling scout noticed him. It was an opportunity. It was desperation wearing a smile. But Lee took it because he had no other choice. And slowly, the camera started to love him. But the industry? Not so much. He was called too stiff, too serious. Just another pretty face. He wasn't taken seriously. Even when he landed small roles, he was typecast. Either the rich villain or the silent sidekick. Then came 1999. And with it, City of the Rising Sun. The film didn't explode, but Lee's performance did. Suddenly, the industry whispered, wait, maybe he's more than just a face. But the rise didn't last. The 2000s hit hard. Bad scripts, box office flops, and a public that moved on quickly. He disappeared from screens for nearly a decade. People thought he gave up, but in silence, he rebuilt. He co-founded a business. He studied film deeply. And when he returned, he came back with The Housemaid, New World, and Assassination. He wasn't playing roles anymore. He was commanding them. But even then, Squid Game wasn't meant to be his. The show had been rejected for over a decade. The script sat in dust. Nobody believed in it. And when Netflix finally greenlit it, Lee was nearly 50. Too old. They said, too irrelevant. But the director knew something they didn't. Lee had lived the struggle this role demanded. He didn't have to act desperation. He knew it. And when Squid Game launched, everything changed. It became the most watched Netflix show of all time. Lee won an Emmy, the first Asian actor ever to win lead actor in a drama. He wasn't just playing the game, he had survived it. Not the game on screen, but the game of poverty, rejection, forgotten fame, and quiet pain. And now, he's a producer. A director. A legend. But if you ask Lee Jung-jae who he really is, he'll say, he's still the boy who once sold ice cream, who never forgot how cold the world could be. And maybe that's why he plays every role with fire in his eyes. Because when you've known rock bottom, you carry the heat of survival into everything you do. It's not acting, it's remembering, it's channeling the ache of empty days, the silence of forgotten years, the echo of doors slammed shut when all you wanted was a chance. For most, Squid Game was a script. A role. A paycheck. But for Lee Jung-jae, it was something more. It was a mirror. He saw his younger self in every desperate decision of Seong Gi-hun. In the way he clung to hope, even when there was none. In the way love for family pushed him to risk everything. In the shame of asking for help. In the guilt of having nothing to give back. Lee didn't have to imagine that pain. He had lived it. Every time the camera rolled, it wasn't about fame anymore. It was about telling a truth no one had ever asked him to speak out loud. Because behind the fame, behind the flashing lights and red carpets, there was still a boy inside. A boy who once slept hungry, who once thought his dreams weren't big enough for this world, who once feared the world had no space for someone like him. And now, that boy stands tall, not because he conquered the world, but because he endured it. That's the difference. Fame can be given, but endurance? That's earned. Through years of rejection, through watching others rise while you remain in the shadows, through losing people, losing hope, and still showing up. That's what Lee did. When his name disappeared from headlines, he stayed. When roles dried up, he waited. When the phone stopped ringing, he picked up the pieces and quietly built his own future behind the scenes. He wasn't loud. He wasn't flashy. He was patient because he knew, deep down, that what was meant for him would come. And when Squid Game finally knocked, he answered not with excitement, but with readiness. He was ready to give the world not just a performance, but a part of himself, and the world felt it. Millions watched, hearts broke, tears fell, because we weren't just watching a character play. A game that we were watching a man survive. Again, and now, when he holds awards in his hand, he doesn't just see a trophy, that he sees proof. Proof that pain doesn't always end you. That being forgotten doesn't mean you're finished. That silence doesn't mean you're not strong. His story isn't about luck, that it's about endurance, about showing up for yourself when no one else will, about building something beautiful with broken pieces, about becoming your own light. Even when the world gives you nothing but darkness, and maybe, just maybe, that's what makes Lee Jung-jae's story worth telling, because it reminds you that you don't have to be born into greatness to become unforgettable. You don't need the world to believe in you before you start. You don't even need to win every round. You just need to keep going, because the ones who rise are never the ones who had it easy. They're the ones who fall, not once, not twice, but so many times that the ground starts to feel like home. The ones who've tasted failure so deeply it left a permanent mark, who've stared into the void of disappointment and kept moving anyway, and rise, even when their hands tremble, even when no one is watching, even when the voices around them whisper, "Give up." They rise, quietly, painfully, defiantly, because something inside them refuses to stay down. Fall again. Because life doesn't reward you after the first T or Y.IT test you. It strips you bare. It breaks your heart just to see if it can still beat. And rise again, with new scars, with fewer illusions, but with eyes that see clearer and a soul that's harder to shake. They rise not because it's easy, but because they must, and again, and again, and again, each time harder, each time lonelier, each time more powerful, until the world, the same world that ignored them, laughed at them, doubted them, has no choice but to look up. To acknowledge the storm they survived, to honor the fire they walked through just to stand where they are. Because rising isn't always glorious. Sometimes it's silent, sometimes it's slow, but it's always real, and it always matters. And when that rise finally becomes undeniable, when the world, after years of silence, finally turns its head, not because you shouted, but because your presence can no longer be ignored, when they see the strength you never bragged about, the quiet power built from every scar, the fire born from rejection, hunger, and heartbreak, that moment, that exact, breath-stealing moment, doesn't just mark success. It becomes something deeper. A symbol. A legend. Proof that the climb was worth it. That every fall had meaning. And that is Rise Untold. That if this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, then don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more voices from the shadows into the light. More stories that the world forgot, but we never will. This is more than a channel. This is Rise Untold. And we're just getting started.